Hello and welcome to Arise News Special. I am Christian Ogodo. Coming up in the next 30 minutes of this Arise News Special, we discuss issues surrounding the Executive-Legislature feud in Nigeria's National Assembly. Almost 2 decades of Nigeria's democracy, the relationship between the executive arm of government and the legislature has been torrid, to say the least. Beginning with ex-President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration in 1999, where he had tensed moments with the National Assembly by imposing on the leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives on members, which led to the constant changes of the President of the Senate, amounting to 5 within his 8 years' reign. This feisty relationship by the Obasanjo administration almost led to his impeachment by the House of Representatives, who felt he was unduly overbearing and dictatorial. The late President Musa Yar'Adua's administration enjoyed some relative executive legislature stability, maybe due to the short span of the administration occasioned by the death of the president. But not so for ex-President Goodluck Jonathan's administration, whose relationship led to the first invasion of the National Assembly by security agents with a shutting down of the legislature. The imbroglio generated by that action snowballed into one of Nigeria's greatest political defections of all times in 2014, where members of the then ruling party, the People's Democratic Party, had its high-profile members defecting to coalesced parties that metamorphosed into today's ruling All Progressive Congress. Since the coming of the APC, the party has witnessed tumultuous relationship between the executive and the legislature. First, against all party permutations, the leadership of both the Senate and the House of Representatives were elected against the majority party's directive and choices. The crisis led to the opposition PDP producing for the first time the deputy president of the Senate. There has never been any love lost between these two arms of government, a situation that has generated backlashes with a breakaway faction of the APC and defections never seen in the political history of Nigeria. The leadership of the Senate, some senators, about 37, and some other members of the House of Representatives, together with 3 governors and 1 deputy governor, all moving back to the opposition PDP where they came from. The frosty relationship led to the siege of the National Assembly during the week in a Gestapo style that led to widespread condemnations, both within and outside Nigeria. The resultant invasion of what is regarded as the heart of any democracy, the legislature also did not spare the then Nigeria spy master, Lawan Daura, who headed the Department of State Security, the DSS, who ordered the invasion of the sanctity of the National Assembly. Now, what are the socio-political and economic implications to Nigeria as we move closer to the next general elections in 2019? These and many more we shall be discussing over the next 30 minutes with an erudite banker, corporate business mogul. He simply wants to be identified and addressed as the founder of Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC, Atedo Peterside. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, you're welcome.
Yeah. Looking at the historicity of our new democracy 20 years on now, about 20 years on, the executive-legislative feud seems to be taking center stage all the time and slowing down government, some people would say.
I think it's partly caused by a failure of leadership. I mean, let's get it very clear and simple. If something is not working, usually, it's partly a reflection of how competent or skilled the leaders are. I mean, it is true that the first experiment with this Senate House of Rep under Obasanjo, there was tumultuous relationship. You had Senate presidents being removed like you described and so on. But I think also, if you notice, I'm not recommending it, but they were removed efficiently, some of them. So it was a well thought out operation. So that, and the party, there was a large dominant party and they knew what they were doing. What we have now is a little bit of people copying somebody else's bad trait. But what's still, the trouble with less competence, with less coordination between the various arms, almost rivalry, and ineffective leadership to coordinate all that. So the result is that it looks as if various actors are going off on a tangent, trying wonderful things, either to make an impression or to push their own agenda. And then, but the other thing I should add also is that some of the things that people are trying to do now, copying what happened 10, 15 years ago, it's actually a lot more difficult to achieve the same things today because some things have changed which they're overlooking. You mentioned 2014, lockdown of National Assembly. Between 2014 and today, in 2018, can you imagine the explosion and the impact of social media in Nigeria? In 2014, we were not getting live images on everybody's phone through WhatsApp and so on. So like I said, people are copying an old game in a new environment, and they're not skilled or knowledgeable enough to manage today's environment. I mean, I give you an example. That's from my own understanding, just as an observer. You can get away with locking down a number of addresses in Abuja, same all over the world. But if you want to lock down, there are 3 places you cannot lock down without the whole world paying attention in this age of social media. 1 is Aso Rock, 2, National Assembly, 3, probably Supreme Court. Now, even in America, locking down the National Assembly here is like in America trying to lock down Capitol Hill. If you lock down Capitol Hill, you must have enough intelligence to immediately give a reason to the media. Bomb scare, lone gunman running amok, or something that they can understand. But it's a little bit daft to lock up a place and not have a story ready to explain your lockdown. This is why I'm saying that, in a way, let's thank God that the people trying these things, the people trying these sort of things like a lockdown and so on, are not intelligent enough to understand that you cannot combine those tactics in this social media age without also having a storyline that gives people the impression that the world is not coming to an end. Do you know there were Nigerians who thought there was a coup? Who thought that seeing masked gunmen and so on, a coup was on? That's Nigerians, not to mention foreigners. By the time people in Australia are reporting that there's a coup in Nigeria, so the people who trying this sort of, let me call it childish games, soon realized that they were dealing with a monster way beyond their control. The plot was running away from them. And so they were looking incompetent and disgracing the country. Like I said, you know, let's thank God that they are not skillful enough at carrying out evil plots. So they are bungling like amateurs, thereby giving the nation a chance to respond and give them the feedback. But nobody needs this. How
degenerating is, you know, this kind of feud? Because we know before 20 years ago when we got our democracy, the legislature is usually the first, you know, casualty of any of these military adventurists then, or adventurism into governance. But how degenerating would you describe the siege, this latest siege, apart from the leadership mentality that you talked about?
You know, when you say degenerative, I think it's sent a scare into several places that probably those who laid the siege didn't understand it would get to so many places so fast. You know, like I said, it's local and international.
Yeah.
Because the information was out there in a flash. So I mean, we were monitoring things. In fact, I felt sorry actually for the poor security men who looked very silly, standing there with masks and so on, and then somebody's rebuking them on almost like live TV, the whole world is watching and so on. And I thought, well, I mean, it's sad, but I felt sorry for those young men who were deployed on such a daft mission, you know, and they couldn't even say anything or explain anything. You follow me?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, but it's degenerative because it also makes people question the quality of leadership in the country. Because the truth is that if anything goes wrong, if something goes terribly wrong in Arise TV, now who am I going to blame? Your CEO. I have a right to say that it is because your CEO is unable to manage Arise TV. The buck stops somewhere. So when something goes wrong in the nation, everybody knows where the buck stops.
But the acting president was very decisive in, in intervening.
Yes, sorry, thank God for that as well. But I'm saying, but the point I'm making is that if things that should not happen get to happen, I can still question the leadership of Arise TV. How did it happen in the first place? You understand me? That you now subsequently manage to arrest a bad situation still leaves open the inquest at how in the first instance, what kind of government were we running that thought that it was sensible to send, you know, gunmen with masks and so on to go to the front of National Assembly, lock out both the legislators and even the ordinary workers and so on. It makes people wonder at the competence of the leadership.
The kind of erosion here, you know, usurpation of powers, not obeying separation of powers, is gradually, some exponents will say, affecting the economic fortunes of Nigeria.
Yes, listen, of recent, now you mentioned the economy. Of recent, Nigeria has made headline news for the wrong reasons with the economy. One, we became the country with the largest number of extremely poor people.
Yeah.
And two, we have become the country with the largest number of school-age children out of school. So the whole world takes notice that Nigeria is now making news for the negative areas in the economy. And what they would love to see is that we have a game plan, we are responding to all this. And instead, what people see is incompetent leadership displayed left, right, and center. So, which means that those numbers I gave you on the economy tells the whole world that we have a problem. When you see a problem, what you want to see is competent leaders who are about to address that problem. Instead, what you see looks like, available on the screen, leaders distracted and involved in all manners of needless fights. Let me explain the needless fights, because, you know, they say that a good general is one that probably never lost a battle. But people also say that a good general never lost a battle because he knew which battles not to fight. If Napoleon did not go to Russia, he wouldn't have been defeated there. Perhaps if Hitler did not go to Russia, perhaps he wouldn't have been defeated. Now, some of these things we're seeing here, people are trying things and they're failing trying those things because they don't have enough understanding that that thing they're trying is beyond them and it's too complicated and it's a needless fight. So what I'm saying is that you should have enough intelligence to know some situations you cannot change immediately, know how to manage them, live with them, you know, sort of neutralize them. But thinking that you can change everything at gunpoint is a mindset of people who have lost the plot.
And this plot is still unfolding, particularly with the defections, you know, the back and forward movement of these politicians.
It is possible that the large defections out of APC got some people worried and they thought, let's try some desperate things. But, you know, I think I've met two types of supporters within APC. And interestingly, they come to diametrically opposite recommendations. The right-hand side are those who believe that we don't need to be perceived as people who are only efficient at trying to oppress the opposition and opponents and hounding them. We need to portray a better face. The other half is under the mindset of part of the way to stop all these defections and and to make our opponents, careful. It's for us to unleash police state tactics on them. See, oil and water don't mix. That's why I said that it's a leadership failure.
Yeah.
Because you cannot even sit down and articulate the best way to solve a problem. Which battles do we not fight? Which situations do we accept? When you misjudge all those things, then you constantly embarrass yourself.
And it's like the populace are losing faith in this leadership shortfall, particularly if you look at the last election in Ekiti, where money became the issue and the people didn't really have their voice or voices.
When you say the populace are losing faith, I think what is happening is that some leaders are being demystified. Sometimes a leader protects his reputation if he was never put in charge completely. When you are in charge, then we get a chance to measure how effective you are. And I think people have been demystified. The whole world can now see that XYZ is in charge, and this is what we are getting. Are these people good enough? Are these people the way forward? Is there a better lot somewhere else? Even within the same organizations, the same institutions, the same parties, can we do better? You begin to raise all those questions. You see, and let me also explain that what is the dangerous aspect of this is that it's clear that some people are exercising power without authority. That comes when the leadership is not effective enough to coordinate everything and be on top of the game and know what everybody is doing. Even if you run an institution of 4,000 staff, for you to be an effective CEO, you have to be in control of all the main units. You have to force them to coordinate. You have to bring them to a meeting. You have to have a hierarchy. You have to decide who's in charge of what. If you miss all those things, and then people begin to see that actually they can misbehave because the leadership is not good enough to even understand who is doing what wrong, then people take advantage. I use an analogy. I was playing polo for many years. If you take a polo pony, you're riding any pony, or in fact, horsemanship generally, I can put it to you that you're in control of a pony, in control of a horse, when the horse knows that you're in charge of the situation. You've got a whip, you're using all the right aids and so on. If you make the mistake of sending a signal to that horse that you don't know what you're doing, you're incompetent, the horse can actually take charge of the situation. A horse is bigger than you, stronger than you. What you're using to control that horse is that you're playing on the whole psyche. You're exercising authority and control. If you lose it completely and the horse decides, this ride on my back, doesn't know what he's doing, it's very dangerous. So when people exercise power without authority, we can finish up with unexpected consequences because they are doing things that they wouldn't do normally under a structured, proper leadership.
Unexpected consequences and the closure or the freezing of 2 bank accounts. You're still watching Arise News Special, and my guest is the founder of Stanbic IBTC and a business mogul, IBTC PLC, and a business mogul, Atedo Peterside. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll look at the nuances of those state government accounts being frozen by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Join us again.
Nigeria. We are 198 million productive people with over 900,000 square kilometers of fertile land. Nigeria's banking system has emerged strong and resilient from the 2016 crisis, which has enhanced our productivity in agribusiness and manufacturing. Come, invest in Nigeria's agribusiness, manufacturing, and value-added mining. Enjoy the Central Bank of Nigeria-led initiatives in funding interventions, stabilized exchange rate, friendly capital repatriation regime, and many more. The Central Bank of Nigeria's robust monetary policy and interventions under President Buhari's administration and position the economy to target and attain a GDP growth of 6% with a strong and growing external reserves. Come, invest in Nigeria. Nigeria, ready for business.
You've been watching Arise News Special, and an interview with the founder of Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC, Atedo Peterside. And before we went on break, you had talked about the poverty index of Nigeria amongst the poorest nations in the world, and Nigeria is ranking.
That is, we have the largest number of extremely poor people in the world.
Nigeria is ranking.
Dealing in poverty.
Yeah, dealing in poverty and the rest.
Mm.
And how would you reconcile this and what some people describe as the excesses or otherwise of Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, in freezing the bank accounts of two state governments arising from this political conflagration?
I think it's unfortunate, and I think that they have to be very careful with such things. We should not send signals. It's about perception as well. We should not send signals that we are about to politicize every institution, including the EFCC. I mean, as soon as the Benue governor defects, or EFCC finds a problem with a security vote, as soon as Akwa Ibom something happens, EFCC wakes up, and so on. See, you almost bastardize EFCC and you trivialize the whole institution and make a mockery of it. And it's unfortunate, and it should stop. Because it does not send the right signal to the investment community, and it makes people want to believe that you're investing in a place that is not a sort of kangaroo environment. Yeah. People want to believe that there's some order, that people follow, people are doing things genuinely and correctly, and so on. It's not in interest of some short-term political game and so on. You start sending signals to the whole world that we are not sort of mature enough to separate and resolve our differences using valid and proper channels. I'm talking about perception. Mm-hmm. Please, I have not said perhaps nobody did anything wrong in any place, but for goodness sake, if you can see an action, some people even made the prediction that as soon as the governor of Benue, defects, the EFCC will go after him, and then it comes to pass. As soon as, so the point I'm making is that we have to be careful there, and I think we should hold all these institutions to account one by one. When I say we, the rest of the country, civil society, everybody, we should hold them to account. Let's not pin everything on the boss of DSS and make it seem as if he's a lone wolf, he's the only bad guy in the system, and so on. I think we should challenge everybody and ask them questions and make them render account. Again, like I said, some of these things are, it's about effective coordination, effective leadership,
And this effective leadership or lack of it seems again to be affecting Nigeria's budgetary provisions, implementations, and the rest. It's just only about 2 months ago or so that the 2018 budget was passed. And we are before the National Assembly again is another supplementary budget and the rest. Why are we not doing things right?
Yeah, but because we're also doing a number of things which are unaffordable. I mean, you talk about the budget being passed and so on. In the budget, was there any provision for fuel subsidy? We're talking about 1.4 trillion spent on fuel subsidy that's outside of the budget. People use terms like, oh, it's under recovery by NNPC. What does that mean? It's better to be transparent. Run a proper budget system, budget for a subsidy. Let us quantify it, approve it, and spend the money properly. There should be appropriation. See, an attempt to do things under the table, it all sends the signal of a bunch of people who think we can
are not serious.
We can bend the rules. We can do exactly as we please, and it gets everybody worried. We know that those sums being squandered are unaffordable. You might say you're playing politics and so on, but my point is that, for goodness sake, they should have been budgeted.
Because what does it cost to really build a new refinery?
And the signal it sends also is that we have a situation where a political party, APC, swept the last elections. So it makes people wonder that even where you have a party that swept you know,
has
an
a
election
majority
and
yeah.
everything. They cannot organize themselves to run an economy, to run security, to run a nation properly. Then people start wondering what happens the day that you have parties that no single one has complete control. One controls Senate, one controls House of Rep, and so on. But like I said, I've said before, and I'm tired of saying it, it's about leadership and leadership failure. So that, I mean, it's something that we have to address very quickly, and everybody has to speak up.
And how about followership?
Yes, you see, but that's why I said everybody has to speak up, because the followers too have to speak up. If I didn't think that there was a need to speak up, I wouldn't be here.
With the level of poverty that you've
That's what I'm talking about.
and the rest,
if I did not think there was a need for followers to speak up, I wouldn't be here. I was going to stay in my house. It's easier. The reason I'm here is to point out that I think it's also a shame if people who are educated do not use their knowledge, experience, intellect to help to speak about live issues, because it influences people. It influences good actors, it influences bad actors. Somebody has to tell people, look, enough is enough. Stop disgracing Nigeria. You can disgrace yourself because you don't know what you're doing. But for goodness sake, there should be minimum standards. I'm happy that the acting president, stepped in on Tuesday and saved us from the ultimate disgrace.
Do you think that this is capable of derailing our democracy? Is it a threat?
Well, I've said
let
me talk in more general terms. I've said that if you have disparate units exercising power without authority, you can finish up with unintended consequences. It's like a horse that soon realizes that the rider doesn't know what he's doing, and the horse takes control. So the point I'm making is that it leads to uncertainty, and then you can easily get unexpected outcomes. Okay. And that's why leaders must take control.
Okay, let me just fire the last salvo before we go. Key operations of the executive and even the legislature is being affected by this situation. What is the way out?
I've said something repeatedly, that people have to understand and accept that if we have a serious problem of the type you describe in life, there are only three things you can do. One, you can do nothing, okay? Or two, you can decide to fight over it. Or three, you can sit down and talk about it. Those are your three choices. Now, you don't want to fight, do you? You don't want them to fight, do you? You don't want them to do nothing, do you? So the people should be clever enough to sit down and talk. That's all we asked of them. They should have clever enough to know when it's time to sit down and talk.
And when not to go to war.
Yeah, or when not to fight battles that lead to nowhere.
To nowhere, yes. Thank you very much, Atedo Peterside, the founder of Stanbic IBTC PLC, and of course he's got his hands in manufacturing and leadership development as well. Thanks for speaking to us on Arise News Special. That's our program for today. We hope you join us again. I'm Christian Ogodo. Thanks for watching.